Your bank account shows zero. Your credit cards are maxed on purchases you never made. Your email password doesn't work. When you call customer service, they tell you that you authorized everything yesterday, except you didn't. You were asleep. Someone else was living your life digitally, and by the time you woke up, your identity didn't belong to you anymore. This isn't science fiction. It's happening right now to people who thought they were careful online. The SIM swap takeover. In 2019, a cryptocurrency investor named Michael Turpin woke up to discover that $24 million had vanished from his digital wallets overnight. He hadn't clicked any suspicious links. His passwords were strong and unique. His computer had no malware. So how did the thieves get in? They never touched his computer at all. The attackers had called his mobile phone provider pretending to be him. They claimed they'd lost their phone and needed their number transferred to a new SIM card. The customer service representative, following standard procedure, asked security questions. Questions the attackers already knew the answers to because they'd spent weeks gathering information from data breaches, social media profiles, and public records. Within 15 minutes, Turpin's phone number was transferred to a device in another state. His phone went dark. No service, no signal, just an error message about the SIM card. That phone number was the key to everything. His email account used it for two-factor authentication. His cryptocurrency exchange account sent verification codes to it. His bank used it to confirm large transactions. The attackers received every single code, every password reset link, every security notification that should have protected him. They worked systematically. First the email, changing the password and recovery options. Then the cryptocurrency exchanges, transferring funds to wallets that would be emptied and laundered before morning. Bank accounts came next, wire transfers initiated and confirmed using the codes sent to that stolen phone number. By the time Turpin realized what was happening and contacted his carrier, the attackers had already moved the money through multiple wallets and exchanges. The funds were gone, converted and distributed across dozens of accounts in different countries. The most disturbing part? The phone company's records showed that Turpin himself had authorized the SIM swap. The call had come from a number associated with his account. The security questions were answered correctly. According to their system, everything was legitimate. Mobile carriers have since tightened security, but SIM swapping hasn't stopped. It's just evolved. Attackers now bribe retail employees for access, exploit automated systems, or use stolen employee credentials. Some have even infiltrated carrier call centers, working as representatives specifically to execute these attacks from inside. Your phone number is the skeleton key to your digital life, and changing that lock requires nothing more than convincing one person, one time, that they're talking to you. The email archive poisoning. Sarah Chen ran a small consulting business, meticulously organized with every client communication archived and searchable. Her email account contained 7 years of contracts, proposals, and confidential client information. She backed up important files, used strong passwords, and considered herself reasonably security conscious. She never imagined someone would weaponize her own archives against her. The attack started with a single compromised password from a data breach at an unrelated website where she'd reused an old password. The attackers accessed her email but didn't lock her out or make obvious changes. Instead, they studied her communication patterns for 3 weeks, learning how she wrote, who she corresponded with, and what projects were active. Then they began editing her archived emails, not deleting them, not adding new ones, just making subtle changes to emails that were months or years old. A contract clause modified here, a project scope altered there, delivery dates shifted by weeks, payment terms changed in archived correspondence with vendors. Sarah only discovered this when a client confronted her about missing a deadline that, according to their email records, was 2 weeks earlier than she remembered. She pulled up the original email thread from 6 months ago. The deadline clearly stated the earlier date, except she distinctly remembered negotiating for extra time. She started checking other archived emails. Project specifications had been altered in ways that made her current work appear incorrect. Signed agreements showed different terms than she'd negotiated. Correspondence with vendors reflected prices she'd never agreed to pay. The attackers had created a parallel reality inside her own email account. Every archived message was potential evidence against her in disputes with clients or vendors. She couldn't prove the emails had been altered because they existed on the mail server with timestamps showing they'd never been modified. When she finally brought in forensic specialists, they found the attackers had used her legitimate access credentials to make the changes through webmail, leaving no unusual login patterns. The edits were made during her normal working hours, from IP addresses associated with her regular locations, because the attackers had been using her compromised laptop remotely while she worked. The goal wasn't immediate theft. It was long-term manipulation, creating confusion and disputes that would destroy her business relationships, while she struggled to prove her own records had been corrupted. Several clients terminated contracts. Vendors demanded payment for goods she insisted she'd never ordered, pointing to email confirmations that she had no memory of sending but couldn't prove were fake. The business collapsed within 4 months. Not from a single catastrophic breach, but from creeping doubt about every archived communication, every saved agreement, every digital record she'd relied on to run her company. Archive poisoning attacks remain largely unknown because victims often don't realize what happened. They assume they misremembered details, made mistakes, or kept poor records. By the time they suspect tampering, months have passed and proving alteration is nearly impossible. The credential stuffing cascade. James Morrison used the same password for years across dozens of accounts. A strong password, actually. 12 characters, letters, and numbers, not a dictionary word. He'd created it in college and saw no reason to change what worked. That password appeared in 47 different data breaches over a decade. Breaches of websites he'd forgotten he'd even registered for. Gaming forums, shopping sites, a random tool he'd used once for a work project. Each time a company got hacked, his email and password combination was added to massive databases, sold and traded across criminal forums. The attackers didn't target James specifically. They targeted everyone. Automated systems tested his credentials against thousands of websites simultaneously. Banking sites, social media, email providers, shopping platforms, investment accounts, insurance portals, any service that accepted username and password login. Most attempts failed. James had changed passwords on his important accounts. But the automated system found 17 accounts where the old credentials still worked. A fitness tracker app, an online pharmacy, a food delivery service, a forum for photography enthusiasts. Accounts James barely remembered existed. Each successful login triggered the next phase. The attackers didn't immediately drain bank accounts or make obvious fraudulent purchases. They gathered information. The fitness tracker revealed his daily routines and home address. The pharmacy showed his medical conditions and prescriptions. The delivery service confirmed his current phone number and usual meal preferences. The photography forum had posts from years ago discussing his work location and colleagues' names. Piece by piece, they assembled a complete profile. Not just data points, but context. When he woke up, when he left for work, what medications he took, what food he liked, where he travelled, who he knew. Then they started testing secondary accounts. His email password was different, but the security questions weren't hard once they knew his first pet's name from the photography forum, his mother's maiden name from genealogy sites, and his high school from Facebook. Password reset, new credentials, access granted. The email contained password reset confirmations for other services, financial accounts, utility companies, his employer's remote access portal. The attackers systematically worked through them, resetting passwords, updating recovery information, and documenting credentials. James first noticed something wrong when his credit card was declined at lunch. He checked his bank app, but his password didn't work. He tried to reset it, but the confirmation email never arrived. His email password had been changed too. By the time he called his bank from his office, the attackers had already initiated wire transfers, applied for credit in his name using information from his accounts, and locked him out of everything connected to his email. His employer's IT department discovered someone had accessed the company network using his credentials at 3 a.m, downloading confidential files. The cascade had taken less than 6 hours from start to finish. One reused password, tested against thousands of sites, opening 17 accounts which provided information to compromise dozens more, which gave access to financial and professional systems. Security experts later explained that credential stuffing attacks test billions of username and password combinations daily. Most people reuse passwords across an average of 7 accounts. The attackers don't need to hack anything. They just need to wait for some company somewhere to get breached and leak credentials. Then they test those credentials everywhere else. James spent 9 months recovering his identity, closing fraudulent accounts, disputing charges, working with credit bureaus, explaining to his employer how his credentials had been used for corporate espionage. Some accounts he never fully recovered because proving he hadn't authorized the access was impossible when the logins appeared completely legitimate. The attackers never targeted him personally. He was one of thousands processed by automated systems every day. The entire attack, from initial testing to complete compromise, was executed by software with minimal human oversight. He wasn't a victim of sophisticated hacking. He was collateral damage in industrial-scale credential harvesting. The deep fake voice authorization, Margaret Yates received a phone call from her bank's fraud department at 2 in the afternoon. The caller ID showed her bank's real customer service number. The representative explained that suspicious activity had been detected on her account, and they needed to verify her identity before proceeding. Standard procedure. She'd received similar calls before when traveling triggered fraud alerts. The representative asked her to confirm recent transactions. Margaret verified 2 legitimate purchases from that morning. Then the representative mentioned a large wire transfer that was being held for review. Margaret said she hadn't authorized any wire transfer. That's what they suspected, the representative explained. They needed her to go through voice authentication to confirm she was really the account holder before they could block the fraudulent transfer. Could she please repeat the phrase they displayed on her screen when she logged into her account online? Margaret pulled up her bank's website and logged in. A security alert appeared asking her to verify her identity by reading a specific phrase aloud for voice authentication. The representative on the phone said they could hear her and to proceed whenever ready. She read the phrase. The representative thanked her, said the fraudulent transfer had been blocked and that she'd receive email confirmation shortly. The call ended. 20 minutes later, Margaret's actual bank called. A wire transfer of $48,000 had just been authorized using her voice authentication. The transfer had already gone through. When had she initiated this? She hadn't. She'd just helped block a fraudulent transfer, except she hadn't been talking to her bank at all. The attackers had spoofed the caller ID to display her bank's real number. They'd created a fake banking website that looked identical to the real one, displayed at a domain name 1 letter different from the legitimate site. When she logged in and read the phrase aloud, she was providing voice authentication for a real wire transfer happening simultaneously at her actual bank. The attackers had previously obtained her login credentials through a phishing email weeks earlier. They'd used those credentials to initiate a wire transfer, but needed voice confirmation to complete it. So they called her, pretending to be the bank, and tricked her into providing that confirmation while she thought she was preventing fraud. The voice recording was processed in real time, played to the actual bank's automated system, and accepted as legitimate authorization. The money transferred immediately to an account that was emptied and closed within the hour. Bank security footage later showed no unusual access. The transfer was initiated using her legitimate credentials from an IP address in her city, at a time when she was actually online. The voice authorization matched her voice pattern exactly because it was her voice recorded moments earlier and replayed. Margaret couldn't prove she hadn't authorized the transfer. The bank's logs showed she'd logged in, initiated the transfer, and provided voice confirmation. Her claim that she'd been tricked into reading a phrase didn't change the technical reality that she had, in fact, authorized it with her own voice. This wasn't even a particularly sophisticated attack. The fake website was a template available for purchase. The caller ID spoofing used widely available services. The real-time audio relay was simple software. The attackers spent perhaps 40 minutes total executing the entire operation. Voice authentication systems have since added protections against playback attacks, but the fundamental vulnerability remains. If you can be tricked into saying the right words at the right time, your voice becomes a weapon against your own accounts. And unlike passwords, you can't change your voice after it's been compromised. The methods vary, but the pattern holds. Your identity lives in systems you don't control, protected by security measures you didn't choose, vulnerable to attacks you've never heard of. The thieves don't need to break down doors when you'll open them yourself, one social engineering trick at a time. What makes you think your accounts are any different from the ones that have already fallen? The Cryptocurrency Vanishing Act. Thomas Chen considered himself security conscious. He used two-factor authentication everywhere. His passwords were unique and complex. He ran antivirus software. He'd never fallen for a phishing email. None of it mattered. Thomas had accumulated cryptocurrency over 6 years. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and several smaller tokens. Total value at its peak reached $230,000. He stored it properly, not on exchanges, but in a hardware wallet. A ledger device that kept his private keys offline and required physical confirmation for any transaction. The hardware wallet was supposed to be unhackable. Private keys never left the device. Even if his computer was compromised, the attacker couldn't access his funds without physically possessing the wallet and knowing his PIN. Thomas felt secure. One evening, he received an email from Ledger's official support address. The subject line warned of a critical security vulnerability affecting certain device models. Users needed to update their firmware immediately to prevent potential fund loss. The email included his device's serial number and purchase date, information only Ledger should have had. Thomas clicked the link. It took him to a website that looked identical to Ledger's official site. The URL was ledger-security-update.com, close enough to legitimate that he didn't question it. The site displayed urgent warnings about the vulnerability and provided a firmware update tool to download. He downloaded the installer and ran it. The program looked professional. Ledger's branding, clean interface, progress bars. It prompted him to connect his hardware wallet to complete the update. He plugged it in. The update tool asked him to confirm the update on his device. He pressed the physical button. The screen showed what appeared to be firmware installation progress. After 2 minutes, the update completed successfully. The tool displayed a message thanking him and recommending he verify his recovery phrase to ensure wallet integrity after the update. This seemed reasonable. Thomas retrieved his recovery phrase, the 24-word seed that could restore his wallet if the device was lost. The update tool provided fields to enter each word for verification. He typed them in. The tool confirmed his recovery phrase was valid and his wallet was secure. Thomas disconnected the device and closed the program. Everything seemed fine. He checked his cryptocurrency balances on a blockchain explorer. All funds were still there. He felt relieved he'd caught the vulnerability in time. 2 days later, he checked his balances again. Every wallet was empty, $230,000 gone. Multiple transactions had been sent to unknown addresses approximately 30 hours after he'd completed the firmware update. He hadn't authorized any of them. What had actually happened became clear when Ledger's real security team contacted him. There had been no vulnerability, no firmware update. The email was fake, the website was fake, the update tool was malware. When Thomas entered his recovery phrase into the fake verification fields, he'd handed the attackers complete control of his cryptocurrency. The recovery phrase was all they needed. With those 24 words, they could restore his entire wallet on their own device and transfer funds anywhere. The attackers hadn't even needed to compromise his hardware wallet. They'd simply tricked him into giving them the one piece of information that made the hardware security irrelevant. The firmware update was theatre. The device button confirmation he'd pressed was real but meaningless, authorizing nothing except the malware's installation. The 30-hour delay before funds were stolen was strategic. It created distance between the phishing attack and the theft, making the connection less obvious. It also gave the malware time to monitor his activity and ensure he wouldn't notice immediately. Thomas reported the theft to authorities. They explained that cryptocurrency transactions are irreversible and generally untraceable when properly laundered. The funds had already moved through multiple wallets and mixing services. Recovery was impossible. His hardware wallet was genuine and functioned perfectly. The security model was sound, but security models assume users can distinguish legitimate communications from sophisticated fakes. That assumption failed. The email had come from a compromised Ledger customer database. Attackers had stolen customer information, including names, addresses, phone numbers, and device serial numbers in a breach months earlier. With that data, they could craft personalized phishing emails containing details that made them appear legitimate. The fake website used HTTPS encryption and displayed a padlock icon in the browser. Most users believe these indicators mean a site is safe. They only mean the connection is encrypted, not that the site is legitimate. The attack exploited a fundamental weakness. Hardware wallets protect private keys but cannot protect recovery phrases. Those 24 words are the master key to everything. If someone obtains them, no amount of hardware security matters. Thomas had done nearly everything right. He'd used secure storage, maintained good security practices, and stayed informed about threats. The attackers simply engineered a scenario where his security knowledge worked against him. His awareness of vulnerabilities made the fake warning more believable. His diligence in updating promptly prevented him from taking time to verify independently. The retirement account heist. Eleanor Martinez was 73 and recently widowed. She wasn't particularly tech-savvy, but managed her finances carefully. Her retirement account contained nearly $600,000 accumulated over 40 years of work. It represented her entire financial security. She received a call one afternoon from her brokerage firm. The caller ID showed the company's correct phone number. The representative identified himself as Robert from the Fraud Prevention Department. He had urgent news. Someone had attempted to change her account password and add a new beneficiary. The activity appeared suspicious and they'd locked her account pending verification. Robert was professional and patient. He explained that elderly customers were frequently targeted by scammers trying to steal retirement funds. The firm took these attempts very seriously. He needed to verify some information to confirm her identity and restore account access. He asked for her account number. Eleanor provided it. He asked for her date of birth and social security number for verification. She gave those as well. He asked her to confirm her current address and phone number. She did. Robert explained they needed to verify she was the actual account holder and not someone who'd stolen her information. He would send a one-time verification code to her phone. When she received it, she should read it back to him to confirm her identity. This was standard security protocol. Eleanor received a text message with a 6-digit code. She read it to Robert. He thanked her and said he was updating her security settings to prevent further unauthorized access attempts. This would take a few minutes. While they waited, Robert made small talk. He mentioned his own mother was about Eleanor's age. He sympathized with how confusing technology could be. He assured her the firm would protect her savings. Eleanor appreciated his kindness. Robert explained the account was now secure, but recommended she reset her password as an extra precaution. He'd walk her through it. She should go to the company website and click the Forgot Password link. She did. A reset email would arrive shortly with a link. She should click it when it came. The email arrived. Eleanor clicked the link. It took her to a password reset page. Robert instructed her to enter a new strong password. She created one and entered it. The system asked her to confirm by entering it again. She did. Robert said that was perfect. Her account was now completely secure. He had one final security measure to implement. He would send another verification code. She should enter it on the website when it appeared. This would activate two-factor authentication to prevent anyone else from accessing her account, even if they somehow got her password. Another text arrived with a code. Eleanor entered it on the website as instructed. Robert confirmed everything was complete. Her account was protected with maximum security. He apologized for the inconvenience and thanked her for her patience. The call ended. Eleanor felt relieved. The firm had caught the attack and protected her savings. She was grateful for Robert's help. That evening, she tried to check her account balance online. She couldn't log in. Her password didn't work. She called the brokerage firm. The real security department informed her that her entire account had been liquidated 4 hours earlier. $587,000 had been transferred to an external bank account. The transfer had been authorized using her credentials and two-factor authentication codes. When had she initiated this? She never had, except she had unknowingly. Robert wasn't from the brokerage firm. The caller ID was spoofed. The texts with verification codes were real, sent by the actual brokerage system when the attacker tried to access her account. When Eleanor read the first code to Robert, she was giving him access to her account. When she reset her password while he was on the phone, she was creating a password he could hear and record. When she entered the second verification code, she was approving the wire transfer he'd just initiated. The entire conversation was social engineering. Every piece of information she provided helped the attacker access her account and authorize the transfer. The friendly small talk was designed to keep her comfortable and trusting while the theft occurred. The brokerage investigated. Their security logs showed legitimate access from Eleanor's IP address using correct credentials and proper two-factor authentication. The system had functioned exactly as designed. Eleanor had provided valid authorization for the transfer. Proving she'd been tricked didn't change the technical record showing she'd approved it. The receiving bank account belonged to a money mule, someone recruited online to receive transfers and forward funds in exchange for a commission. The mule believed they were helping process international business payments. By the time investigators traced the transfer, the money had moved through 3 countries and disappeared into cryptocurrency. Eleanor couldn't recover her savings. She'd authorized the transfer herself, even if she'd been deceived into doing so. The brokerage's terms of service made account holders responsible for protecting their credentials and approving transactions. She hadn't violated her password or lost her phone. She'd simply been convinced to use them in ways that benefited a thief. The pattern repeats endlessly. Attackers don't break security systems when they can convince users to open doors willingly. Every authentication method assumes the person using it can't be manipulated into using it incorrectly. That assumption fails constantly. Your voice can authorize transfers you don't want. Your credentials can approve access you didn't intend. Your verification codes can confirm actions you'd never choose. The systems work perfectly. The humans operating them are the vulnerability that makes every theft possible. The systems aren't failing. They're doing exactly what they were designed to do: authenticating legitimate credentials, processing valid requests, executing properly authorized commands. The vulnerability isn't in the code or the encryption or the multi-factor authentication. It's in the assumption that the person holding the credentials actually wants to do what they're authorizing. The social media account clone. Lisa Rodriguez had built her photography business through Instagram over 5 years. 42,000 followers, regular client bookings from her portfolio, a reliable income stream that supported her family. She posted consistently, engaged with her audience, and had built genuine relationships with clients and fellow photographers. One morning, several followers sent her concerned messages. Someone was impersonating her account. She checked and found a profile using her exact name, her profile picture, and copies of her photos. The bio was identical except for one detail: a different email address for booking inquiries. She reported it to Instagram. The platform's automated system reviewed the report and found no violation. Both accounts were allowed to exist. The impersonator hadn't technically stolen copyrighted content because Lisa's photos were posted publicly. Creating an account with a similar name wasn't prohibited. The clone account began messaging her followers. Friendly conversations, professional discussions about photography. The impersonator had studied Lisa's communication style from public comments and replicated it convincingly. When followers inquired about bookings, the fake account provided pricing that matched Lisa's rates exactly. Information publicly visible on her website. Several followers booked sessions, sending deposits to the email address in the cloned profile. The impersonator confirmed bookings, provided shoot locations and times, and maintained professional correspondence leading up to the scheduled dates. On the day of the shoots, no one showed up. The photographer they'd hired didn't exist. The deposits, ranging from $200 to $800 each, were gone. Lisa only learned about this when an angry client showed up at her studio demanding to know why she'd missed their scheduled newborn session. Lisa had no record of any booking. The client showed her the Instagram messages, the payment confirmation, the shoot details. all from an account that looked exactly like Lisa's. She tried again to get Instagram to remove the impersonator. The platform's response stated that username disputes required trademark documentation. Lisa didn't have a registered trademark for her name. The impersonator wasn't using her exact username, just a visually similar one with a character substitution that was hard to notice. No policy violation, no removal. The scam continued for 3 weeks. The impersonator collected deposits from 11 people before disappearing. Total theft, approximately $6,000 from victims who thought they were hiring Lisa. Her actual business suffered as word spread about the scam. Potential clients questioned whether they were contacting the real photographer. Her reputation took damage from fraud she hadn't committed. The impersonator had never hacked any account, never stolen any password. They'd simply copied public information and used social engineering to exploit trust that Lisa had spent years building. The victims weren't careless. They'd done what seemed like due diligence, checked the follow account, reviewed the portfolio, read comments from satisfied clients. Everything appeared legitimate because it was, except for the one detail that mattered. Social media verification badges are supposed to prevent this. Lisa applied. Instagram denied her request. Her account didn't meet the criteria for public interest. She wasn't a celebrity, major brand, or public figure. Just a small business owner whose identity could be cloned without consequence. The impersonator was never identified. The email address used for payments was disposable. The payment service account was opened with stolen identity information. By the time victims realized they'd been scammed, the money had moved through multiple accounts and disappeared. Lisa spent months rebuilding trust with her audience. She added verification steps for bookings, created a website with clear warnings about imposters, posted regular reminders about her only legitimate contact methods. But the damage lingered. Some potential clients simply moved on to photographers without identity theft complications. The attack worked because authentication on social media is performative rather than cryptographic. If an account looks right, acts right, and says the right things, most people accept it as legitimate. The technical infrastructure provides no way to prove you're the real person behind a name and face. You can verify your email address and phone number, but so can someone impersonating you. The medical records. Hijack. David Park received a letter from his health insurance company denying coverage for emergency surgery he'd received 2 months earlier. The procedure cost $47,000. The denial stated that he'd failed to obtain required pre-authorization and the surgery was therefore not covered. He'd be responsible for the full cost. David was confused. He'd verified insurance coverage before the surgery. The hospital had confirmed everything was approved. He called his insurance company. The representative explained that someone had called 3 days before his surgery and cancelled his policy. The cancellation was processed properly using his member ID and correct answers to security questions. The policy was terminated the day before his procedure, making him uninsured when the surgery occurred. David hadn't cancelled anything. He'd been in pre-op appointments that week. He definitely hadn't called to terminate his health insurance right before major surgery. But the insurance company's records showed otherwise. Someone using his information had called, verified their identity, and requested policy cancellation. The system had worked correctly. The investigation revealed that his medical records had been compromised 6 months earlier when a healthcare provider's database was breached. The breach was disclosed in a letter David had received and ignored. It seemed routine. Breaches happened constantly. He'd signed up for the offered credit monitoring service and forgotten about it. The attackers obtained his name, date of birth, social security number, insurance member ID, and detailed medical history from that breach. They studied his records and discovered he had surgery scheduled. Then they called his insurance company and cancelled his policy, timing the cancellation to take effect right before his procedure. The goal wasn't identity theft in the traditional sense. They weren't applying for credit or opening fraudulent accounts. They were creating a billing crisis that would pressure David into paying the hospital directly. Once he paid, they planned to approach him, offering to help appeal the insurance denial, charging a fee for services that would never materialize. David spent 4 months fighting the insurance company. He provided evidence he hadn't called to cancel. He documented his whereabouts during the call. He obtained phone records proving he couldn't have made the cancellation. None of it mattered. The insurance company's position was that someone with access to his personal information had properly authenticated and cancelled the policy. Whether that person was actually him was his problem, not theirs. Eventually, the insurance company reinstated his coverage retroactively after he filed complaints with state regulators. But the process required dozens of hours, multiple appeals, and the threat of legal action. For 4 months, he faced the possibility of $47,000 in medical debt for a surgery that should have been covered. The attackers never got a cent from David directly, but they'd successfully weaponized his own medical records and insurance system against him. The breach that seemed minor and abstract had real consequences that took months to resolve. And somewhere in the stolen database were thousands of other patients whose records could be exploited the same way. Medical identity theft doesn't always look like someone using your insurance for their treatment. Sometimes it's using your information to deny you treatment, create billing chaos, or manipulate systems that assume authentication equals identity. The records are accurate, the procedures are followed correctly, and the victim still ends up fighting to prove they are who they claim to be. The cloud storage ransom. Patricia Shu ran a graphic design studio with a small team. All their work was stored in a cloud service. Client files, project archives, design assets, everything accumulated over 8 years of business. The cloud service had security features enabled: 2-factor authentication, encrypted storage, automatic backups. She'd paid for the premium tier specifically for the enhanced protection. One Monday morning, none of her team could access their files. Login credentials worked, but every folder appeared empty. 53,000 files gone. Patricia contacted the cloud services support. They confirmed that all files had been deleted the previous evening at 11:47 p.m., deleted by her account, using her credentials, from her IP address. She hadn't deleted anything. She'd been asleep at 11:47, but someone using her account had systematically deleted everything, then emptied the trash to prevent recovery. The cloud services terms clearly stated they weren't responsible for user-initiated deletions. The backups they maintained were incremental, not historical. Once files were deleted and trash was emptied, the backups updated to reflect the deletion. Patricia's computer was clean. No malware, no suspicious activity. Her password was strong and unique. 2-factor authentication was enabled and functioning. So how did someone access her account from her IP address while she slept? The answer was in her home router. 3 months earlier, she'd experienced internet problems and called her ISP's tech support. The technician had remotely accessed her router to adjust settings. That remote access session had planted a backdoor that gave the attacker persistent access to her home network. The attacker hadn't compromised her computer directly. They'd compromised her network, then waited. They monitored traffic, learned her patterns, identified her cloud storage account. They captured her credentials when she logged in over her own network. The 2-factor authentication codes were intercepted the same way, passed through her compromised router where the attacker could read them. On Sunday night, while Patricia slept, the attacker used her captured credentials and intercepted authentication codes to log into her cloud account. Because they were connecting through her compromised router, it appeared to be coming from her IP address, her legitimate residential IP. The cloud service had no reason to flag the login as suspicious. They deleted everything methodically. Client projects, design assets, financial records, communications. 8 years of work erased in 20 minutes. Then came the email. Not to Patricia's business address, but to her personal email. The attacker explained that her files could be recovered. They had copies. Ransom cost $15,000 in Bitcoin. Payment deadline 48 hours. Patricia contacted law enforcement. They explained that ransomware attacks increasingly targeted cloud storage rather than local systems. Cloud services were harder to defend because access could come from anywhere, and proving unauthorized access was difficult when credentials and authentication were technically valid. Recovery without paying was unlikely. She contacted data recovery specialists. They confirmed the cloud service's incremental backup system meant deleted files were genuinely gone. No recovery method existed. The cloud service's position remained firm. She deleted the files using her own account. Their responsibility ended there. Patricia's business faced a choice: pay the ransom and hope the criminals delivered, or lose 8 years of work and face potential lawsuits from clients whose projects were gone. She paid. The attacker provided a link to download encrypted archives containing her files. The files were complete and intact. The business survived, but the violation lingered. Every security measure had been in place and functioning correctly. The compromise came from a legitimate tech support session that solved her internet problem while creating a worse vulnerability. The ISP's technician might not have even been aware they'd planted backdoor access. Many remote support tools include persistent access features for convenience. Cloud security assumes your local network is trusted. If that assumption fails, all the encryption and authentication in the world just confirms that the attacker using your credentials is you. The system can't distinguish between you accessing your files and someone else accessing them through your compromised network using your stolen credentials. The smart home invasion. Kevin Tran loved his smart home setup. Connected thermostat, security cameras, smart locks, automated lights, voice assistants in every room. Everything integrated through a central hub, controllable from his phone. He'd spent thousands building the system and felt it made his home more secure. He was wrong. The problem started subtly. Lights turning on at odd hours, the thermostat adjusting to uncomfortable temperatures. He assumed it was software glitches and adjusted the settings. Then his security camera footage started disappearing. Recordings from specific time periods would be missing from the cloud storage, replaced with error messages claiming the camera had been offline. Kevin checked the cameras. They were online and functioning, but footage kept disappearing. He contacted the camera company's support. They reviewed his account and found that someone had been logging in regularly and deleting recordings. The logins came from authorized devices. His devices, according to the system. His phone was clean. No suspicious apps, no malware. But somehow someone had access to his smart home system. Then came the escalation. One evening while he was at work, his smart lock opened. His security system disarmed. His cameras turned off. Someone entered his home, spent 17 minutes inside and left. The smart lock logged the exit. Kevin arrived home to find nothing obviously stolen. No forced entry, no damage. But someone had been inside. They'd gone through his office, his bedroom, his personal spaces. The violation was complete, and the security system had not only failed to stop it, but had actively facilitated it. The investigation revealed the vulnerability. Kevin's smart home hub had a firmware flaw that allowed remote access if someone knew the device's MAC address. His MAC address had been leaked in a database from the manufacturer's cloud service. The manufacturer had patched the flaw, but the patch required manual installation. Kevin hadn't updated his firmware in 18 months. The attacker used the MAC address to access his hub remotely. From there, they controlled everything: cameras, locks, thermostats, lights. They'd been monitoring his patterns for weeks, learning when he left for work, when he returned, when the house was empty. They deleted camera footage to hide their surveillance. The physical intrusion was reconnaissance. They were looking for valuable items to steal later, documents to photograph, anything worth exploiting. They didn't take anything during the first visit because the goal was to maintain access for future intrusions. If Kevin realized he'd been robbed, he might investigate and discover the compromised system. Kevin updated all firmware, changed all passwords, and reset every device. He added additional security layers. But the damage was done. Someone had intimate knowledge of his home, his routines, his possessions. They'd watched him through his own cameras, entered through his own locks, and the security system he'd installed for protection had become the vulnerability that enabled the attack. Smart home devices are computers connected to physical security systems. When those computers are compromised, the physical security fails completely. Your front door lock might be unpickable, but if someone can send it an unlock command remotely, the physical security is irrelevant. Your security cameras might record everything, but if the attacker can delete the recordings, they've seen you without being seen. The convenience of controlling your home from anywhere means someone else can control it from anywhere if they gain access. Every smart device is a potential entry point. Every connected system is a potential vulnerability. The more automated your security, the more ways it can be automated against you. These aren't abstract scenarios. They're documented cases happening to real people who thought they were protected. The technology works perfectly right up until it's used against you. Your security systems authenticate requests, execute commands, and follow protocols exactly as designed. The problem isn't technical failure. It's that the systems can't tell whether you're the one making the request or someone pretending to be you. Every authentication method assumes the person with the credentials wants what they're authorizing. That assumption breaks when someone tricks you into authorizing things you don't understand, steals credentials you didn't know were valuable, or compromises systems you thought were secure. The attacks succeed because security is only as strong as the weakest human moment in the chain. You can't opt out. Your information exists in databases you didn't create. Your accounts are protected by security you didn't design. Your identity lives in systems you don't control. When those systems are compromised, you're not necessarily informed. When your information is stolen, you might not know until it's used against you. The thieves are patient. They don't need immediate access. They collect information over months. They wait for the right moment. They engineer situations where your security works against you. And when the theft happens, the records show you authorized everything. You open the doors, you provided the codes, you confirm the transactions. Proving you were manipulated doesn't change what the logs say you did. The retirement account heist.